Okay, thank you, Gabriel. And shout out to our Facebook, YouTube fans out there. Tenakotu, tenatatu katoa, magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. Well, Gabriel, you're my guardian angel, since I wonder if you know that Gabriel, the Archangel Gabriel, is the patron saint of diplomacy. Do you know that, Gabriel? Now you do. Okay, so I'd like to thank Greg, Anita, Alice, the Hutt Multicultural Council, the Filipino Migrants Trust, for this wonderful opportunity to be with you this afternoon. And at the outset, I'd like to say, my job is more like being a mayor than, the usual, cocktail party ambassador. I'm like a mayor of 50,000 Filipinos here in Aotearoa. And I must say also, I've grown up and I've worked all over the world, and Filipinos know of no better home overseas than here in New Zealand. But with that said, I am very disturbed, very angry to learn of these instances of abuse. And I thank June, Mina, and Julia for their wonderful presentations. So I'd like to supplement this by what goes on before you all actually get here. So before we jump into that, I'd just like a raise of hands. How many of you here are Filipino students? Okay, so the hometown cheering squad is here. May I ask then, go one by one, our other friends here, kindly give me your name and the country you're from.
My name is Dinesh Guru, and I'm from Nepal. My name is Purna, and I'm also from Nepal.
My name is Michael, and I'm from the Philippines.
I am Darwin, and I'm from the Philippines as well. Patrick from Philippines also.
Kathy from the Philippines.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, let's be honest about this. Well, again, it was good to know that the instances of not very good experiences, because again, the New Zealand education experience is one of the best, if not the best, in the world. But there are those who come here and their experiences are not so good. And I think the figure was about like maybe 10% or so with some sort of problem. So that should be 0%. And how do we do this? I have a very simple solution, but of course, people will not be happy with this. Simply prevent PTEs from recruiting international students. I don't have the statistics on that, but I think the bulk of the abuse comes from PTEs. Now, I've kept my tongue inside my, my dentures. No, don't have dentures. Is because I wanted to lash out at the certain actions of certain stakeholders, but I had to wait till the elections were over, because what I would say would probably be construed as political interference of some sort or another. But let me say this, is that one of the problems is that, let's be frank about it, many who come here to study don't just come here with studies in mind. It is to migrate, to work. And let's not kid ourselves, is that many, maybe not necessarily most, but many, or perhaps most, are willing to make that investment. I mean, those of us coming from developing countries, making that investment to come here to study, one of the world's best countries to study, but not just to have a nice, wonderful degree, but to be able to have the chance to work and live. And my God, if you're going to get into that territory, that is Mina's territory, the work of the immigration advisor. But what do we have? Many parasites in our home countries who are peddling this lie that they can guarantee these three magic words: study, work, and live. But these people peddling this are not immigration advisors. Mina, correct me if I'm wrong. If somebody says study, work, and live, that is more or less the province of an immigration advisor. Don't have to nod there. I know the legal ramifications of any agreement, but I have diplomatic immunity, so there. This is a big problem because daily I see on Facebook people who I doubt very much are immigration advisors pending these three words: study, work, live. And even those who may be immigration advisors are giving misleading advice. And why is that? Because it was a decision by the government not to regulate education agents and education advisors. And what were they citing? The business and economic ramifications. Well, bloody hell, we're not a cash cow, sorry to say. And we have to put an end to this. So I call on you, our friends here, Kiwis and future Kiwis, friends of Kiwis, to work together to address to the new government, whoever it may be, to, one, regulate any form of education recruitment overseas. In fact, maybe in the future follow-up meeting, we should have Education New Zealand here. And one of the parties, I won't mention which one, had a very simple, straightforward solution. Consider only allow immigration agents to do any sort of education recruitment overseas. And I think that will curb a lot of abuse. And by golly, there is blood on the hands of those who violated this, since some have committed suicide over desperation of having been misled, selling practically most of their family assets just to come here, thinking they could recover it by finding a job here. Now, enough of the fire and brimstone, but you get the point. Curb education abuse, and we call it out what this is. This is a form of human trafficking. So hashtag stop education trafficking. And I'm glad though that we have many friends here. For example, the Migrante Filipino labor movement, together with First Union and the labor sector here, and our friends, of course, Filipino Migrant Trust. Up in Auckland, we have Pinoy We Care, a coalition of like-minded people and organizations. So I'm also proud to be the advisor, the patron of the Wellington Multicultural Council. So I want to work very closely with our multi-ethnic councils and multicultural councils around this country. Now, in terms of creative solutions, well, first one is we have to have, well, these parasites will not be enabled in the Philippines unless they're enabled back here. So all education institutions must, well, there are actually existing codes. However, they seem to be in the nature of rather voluntary with no penal sanction. So this is what we have to lobby Parliament. The new government is to strictly clamp down on any sources of a potential abuse. And I will go around, now that the elections are over, I will go around and calling on all these education providers. I will send a letter saying, well, I hope you are not doing blank, 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 misleading Filipinos and other peoples from other countries into thinking that simply by enrolling in your course, they can work here with this tagline, study, work, live. And if you're going to say that or imply that, you must be an immigration advisor. If not, you are violating New Zealand law. And you must be accountable, and hopefully there can be a parallel Philippine law and body of regulations that can also clamp down on this. And in fact, we had a visit of our cabinet secretary who was appraised of this, and he is, we are working together to help curb this abuse. And also, as I speak, there is a visit by the registrar, the New Zealand registrar of New Zealand Immigration Advisors, who is talking with our government. But in terms of those who are already here, I'm actually working on so I'm also working very closely with Julia and NZQA. I mean, it's not all problem, it's mostly good. Our work together is to help bring Philippine educational and vocational qualifications to the standard and the system of the NZQA. And it was so good that the rest of ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, want in. So kudos to NZQA. Now, working with June, we have a project which began as a simple idea, a sister city relationship. The first one between New Zealand and Philippines through Lower Hutt and Taguig, my hometown, which is part of Metro Manila. But we've expanded that concept to be called the Diplomatic Chamber, which is like, well, originally to be called the Diplomatic Chamber of Commerce and Cities, but simply Diplomatic Chamber, which will bring together the stakeholders in the Hutt Valley who want to interface, to work, to do business with their counterparts in the Philippines. But it's like, you know, buy one, take a million, meaning that instead of the traditional just sister-city relationship, it was just one-on-one. I'm networking interested New Zealand cities and their local communities with counterparts in the Philippines, but I also want to expand this to Nepal and other countries, so work to me on that. Now, so the idea of the diplomatic chamber is we bring together those who want to promote relations between the two countries. Those who are here, those who are back in the Philippines. And as June had said, is that she has encouraged you to really do your homework in terms of seeking your potential employers and do things like tweak your CVs. I mean, it's a different format here. And also join Toastmasters. I would also like you to invite you, therefore, to help maximize your opportunities to join us in the diplomatic chamber. And we'll work with FMT, Dina here of the Bulwagan, our host of the venue here, and the multicultural councils to properly launch and welcome you to the Diplomatic Chamber project. Now, the philosophy behind the Diplomatic Chamber is universal diplomacy. We're very much inspired by Gabriel over here, I mean the Archangel, that diplomacy is the world's oldest and most universal professions. Just watch out for my video on that to tell you what that's about, since I have limited time. But the idea of universal diplomacy is everyone is a potential diplomat. So be a diplomat for the Philippines, for Nepal, for New Zealand. But as a diplomat, how can you advance world peace and prosperity and work for our planet? Through becoming a productive citizen of wherever you are. And productivity, the prerequisite is sound employment, decent and good employment. So very much what we want to do with the embassy and how we would like to help you make sure you have the best possible experience here in New Zealand is something we can all work on together. So that's it. I'd be happy to chat with you in the open forum and then offline afterwards. Maraming salamat po.